Well, hello everybody. Like Mark said, my name's Pat McKone, and I want to talk to you today about this really critical topic, that of selecting the best engineers for your project. And you don't have to look too far to find that the growth in capital projects, in particular in the oil and gas industry, just ballooned. We're looking at $300 billion of investment, and that number is growing. There's no question. And you take that in combination with tighter regulations at the state and federal level, the need to provide environmental justification for a lot of what we do, the impact of how our federal agencies may be changing, and of course, as owner-operators, the performance demands are continuing to increase, and that all drives a need to find the right quality of engineer for the type of projects that we're carrying out. Resources are a challenge, and that really is a key point I want to make today with you folks. I'm sure you're all experiencing it, that whether you're in the storage business, you're managing custody transfer, or you're managing accounting related to capital projects, or you're doing new facilities work, there's no doubt we're all facing a resource constraint, finding the right people to do your projects at the right time. It's quite a challenge, and in particular, if you're finding that right engineer, who do I call, and what do I want them to do, and if I'm not doing a mega project, how do I even get their attention? So let's talk about those points. Who do I call? Well, oftentimes, my experience has been we draw on the folks, the engineering firms that we've used on prior projects. This is pretty routine, and there may be some issues with that. We'll come back to that. What do I want them to do? This can range from starting with the back of a napkin, almost literally, to providing a complete scope of work for a project. So you need to know what you want them to do before you go on the search. And once I have that in hand, how do I even get their attention? They're all busy doing other things. So how will my project get on their radar screen and move forward with my important project? Well, I'm encouraging you all to map it and do it. This is where management sets the project charter. This identifies your priorities and simplifies the chain of command, both within your organization and within the client's organization. You're going to set out your key milestones and your project priorities, and this, of course, as I mentioned earlier, can vary depending upon whether your project is at the back of the envelope or the napkin stage or quite a bit further along. But each of these items needs to be written back into your project charter to help you clearly communicate with your engineering partners on what it is you want them to do. And by all means, when you're through that phase, delegating the resources to a task and setting realistic completion dates for your deliverables. I simply can't overemphasize how important that is. The folks who are going to be working with you can develop ownership quickly in your project and start carrying out the work. And like I said, whether that's early in the conceptual design, the early phases of FPL, or perhaps you have land acquisition and permitting already in progress, the level of definition of your project could be improving, but still that information needs to be plowed back into your charter and communicated to your prospective engineering partners. You need to define the deliverables, and there's a little formula I like to suggest that not only are you asking your engineering firm what to do, or you're giving them advice on the scope, but you're also telling them when you need it. So it's a complete understanding. Here's what I need, and here's when I need it. And when it comes to communication, folks, it won't come as a surprise that I'll be saying over-communicate. For me, that's what I have to do to get communication about right. If I feel like I'm over-communicating, I probably have it about right. And what I mean by that is am I communicating clearly within my own organization as to what this project needs to accomplish, and have I engaged the right people? And what is the status as I go through evaluating various engineering firm prospects? How is it going? How am I tracking to closing with the right engineering firm? Now, in your role as a project manager on your project, real critical to remain objective. I mentioned earlier that it's quite common for us to rely on engineering services, folks that we've worked with before. And sometimes it's easy to get blinded to that because you know, we have a comfort level working with those folks. We know what they can do, but in some cases we may not know what they really shouldn't be doing, that they're not qualified, let's say. They haven't necessarily completed the type of work that you want to carried out. And so this is the objective component. When you're talking with folks, in particular those that you have worked with in the past, is continue to qualify them for the work that you're about to undertake. You want them to be successful, and you can help facilitate that by not stretching them too much. A little bit of stretch is probably pretty good. You'll both enjoy it. Too much, and you might find out that that your contractor, your engineering firm, is quickly over their head, and they're left scrambling for help in critical areas. So you want to discuss not only your roles and responsibilities with your management, but also with the engineering firm's management. This can really help facilitate building a good rapport between the two firms, yours and your engineering contractor. And by incorporating these aspects into your project charter, it really gives you a complete framework for having a meaningful discussion, not only with your team, but as you hire your engineering firm, you get to clarify your requirements and the interfaces you're likely to have during the project with your engineering firm's team. So let's talk about finding that engineering firm. You know, sometimes we all need that help, and we need it in a rush. This could be driven by a great economic opportunity. It could be regulatory driven, and nonetheless, you need a solution quickly. Again, it's very tempting to rely on folks that we know for those projects, and often, let's face it, that can be a very good choice. But I'd encourage you to think about perhaps, let's say, non-conventional sources of where you might find engineering talent. In particular, if your project is not, is not huge, you might be flying a little bit below the radar, and therefore your contractors, your engineering firms, might not be that familiar. Well, talk to your general contractors. Maybe you've had a project recently that worked out quite well. Talk to the general contractor and what engineering firm was used. Maybe this is at a colleague's firm, and you're consulting with them as to successes and perhaps even not so successes they've had with various engineering firms that have been part of their industry, and of course they're can't really underestimate the value of having great references. And I mean, folks who are willing to give you a testimony that, yeah, this project worked really well. It was the engineering was handled by company XYZ, and in particular, their project manager was, just led it just superbly. This is a great informal source of information that I'm sure you'd agree you need to tap. And then, as I alluded to earlier, having unconventional sources of engineering services. I did a project that involved a particular vendor not realizing that they had in-house engineering. So their engineering, after qualifying them for my project, I realized that I could seriously consider using them for the entire project. Like you say, tap into those unconventional sources. In particular, when you're in a rush, you need help now, you need qualified resources. Sometimes the conventional channels might not give you the results you want as quickly as you want. The PDP thing, I wanted to talk about that. As you know, people do projects. It's not systems. It's not the structure that gets it done. It's the people that are leading it within your organization and within the engineering firm's organization. As an operator, you can help facilitate people doing projects by knowing what are your priorities. What aspects of this project are absolutely critical, must-haves that you cannot waver from. No doubt there's a handful of those things that need to be discussed and documented, not just for sharing with your engineering firm, but to get agreement and alignment within your own team. do definitely draw on resources within your own company. I'm not suggesting necessarily here that you try to take engineering work back in-house that should go outside. I'm not, there could be opportunities where that makes sense. What I am saying is that there's plenty of folks within your own firm that may be doing projects that you're not familiar with. In larger organizations, it's not uncommon for multiple projects to be running at the same time, either within the projects team or at an engineering level. And you may find that an incredibly valuable resource to identify engineering firms that you might not have otherwise selected. Now, we haven't talked too much about the contracting portion, but I do want to mention that from the owner-operator perspective. If you're in a rush in particular, as you know, this can be an issue. Not having a master services agreement, and that's what MSA stands for, not having an MSA in place can be a bottleneck, particularly in an organization that is let's say, procurement-driven. If you're running SAP or other enterprise-level programs, it's not at all unusual to have a significant scope in the engineering firm selection driven by procurement. This is often long-term, has a lot of benefit to it, but if you're in a rush, the firm that you want to select doesn't have an MSA, you might find that to be a very difficult short-term challenge that might drive you to choose a different engineering firm that does have an engineering services agreement already or has an existing MSA. And while you're going through your assessment of resources, you're looking at your own project to ensure that you're maintaining an awareness to your regulatory compliance. What I mean by that is the regulatory landscape is changing. We all know that. You're staying in touch with that and adapting your scope as needed. And it's also important to anticipate future requirements. Regulatory compliance is not a one-stop exercise. It often requires repeat steps, repeat engineering, repeat activity to assure the regulator that what you're doing not only complies with what's important during construction, but also during operation of the facility. And if there's opportunity to bundle compliance and project, maybe there's an opportunity to take care of two scopes at the same time. That can be quite beneficial and use resources, short engineering resources, very effectively. And this last point I wanted to make, I call it decide on reciprocal roles. You want to really get the most out of your team performance. So what you're doing is you're building bridges between your project team and your engineering firm's team. This means that within your project group, you no doubt have your own discipline engineers, and you're connecting those with the appropriate folks at the contractor's firm. There's several ways of doing this. The least of which is to simply meet with your engineering firm and define these roles and get people talking to one another. Again, people do projects. If you're from the engineering firm side of it, it certainly helps to communicate in writing. During the study phase of most projects, I'm sure you've experienced that the interchange of thoughts and ideas is often so brisk that putting anything in writing is maybe, it's challenging certainly, and may even be, let's say, even inappropriate because things are changing so quickly. What you discussed yesterday may already be out of date today. So keeping that might not be entirely beneficial, but you'll know that in terms of communicating with your engineering firm and between your engineering firm and your operator, things that define deliverables, things that define dates, and those things that define responsibilities, putting those in writing can be helpful to both teams and help build rapport. I say assert good document control during a project, in particular one that's in a rush. It's easy to let this thing we call document control slip a little bit. I'd encourage you to really look at how you do that. There's plenty of good software packages that facilitate good document control, so I'm not going to elaborate on that. What I am saying here, though, is do use those tools. Do assert as an engineering firm that you have them, that you're good at using them, and you can bring your operating client on board with your system to simplify that interchange of FEL documents, your drawings, and follow-ups. And don't hesitate as an engineering firm to meet regularly with the client. It's just such a great idea to have great contact at multiple levels so you can flex with your client as their scope and their needs change. And I mentioned having maybe some vertical orientation and contact with the client. It's really key as an engineering firm, if there's issues come up, that you can expedite the issue resolution. And sometimes that involves more people than just the project manager. It can be very efficient, not just to manage issue resolution, but of course you all want to build credibility for future work, and a great way to do that is to have multiple contacts, likely vertically within the organization. That's about all I wanted to say in today's webinar, and I'm delighted you could join us. And I'll turn you over. We're going to turn over and answer any questions. The first, I've got a question here that basically, I think it says, why is selecting the right firm so important? And that's a great question. I mean, our projects are usually all pretty fast-paced. We have a lot to accomplish, and people are usually a great choice to get you across the finish line. And so if time is of the essence, you're trying to get your deliverables out, having the right people on the engineering firm side to elaborate with the right folks within your owner team, you'll find it goes quite a bit better. Oh, here's another one. What's the biggest pitfall of not selecting the right engineering firm? Well, we've always, many of us have experienced issues either at a interpersonal level or with incomplete deliverables. And so I'll just touch on those two things. Not only should the deliverables be quality, but let's enjoy getting there. It's not just the deliverable. Let's think about the journey and how we get there. And having the right people work together can really drive a quality project.